When you have vandalism and the media shows up and then, all you see is the trash stuff and the graffiti and all, then that becomes the message of the media.
Vandalism in the psychology laboratories caused extensive damage, and tonight, Johnson County authorities have the building quarantined as they try to clean up toxic chemicals.
They're basically working for the other side, because what they're doing is they're removing animal experimentation from an area where parts of the world where there's some transparency, some regulation, some regular governmental inspection. You have freedom of speech and press, so you can protest if things are not being done as they should. And the work that used to be done by outfits like Huntington in places like New Jersey and England is now being done in places like Ghana, Pakistan, South Korea, where you have limited freedoms, if any.
No doubt there will be some companies that will go offshore. However, they still have to trade on the stock exchange. They still have to do that in New York City. We're here, and we're going to stay here. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing is that, for every country, there will be activists in those countries, and then we can always learn to speak Chinese and go there. We're not afraid to follow them where they go.
I'd like to see Ingrid Newkirk or Camille Hankins or Kevin Jonas or Wayne Pacelli try to organize peaceful protests in communist China. That would be a hoot.
Really, if you want to achieve a reduction in the animal suffering involved in experimentation, what you really want to do is put it in the places where it's under a microscope, where it's under constant supervision, like England and the United States and a couple other countries in Western Europe.
I have a problem with the ALF being on the terrorist list above Al-Qaeda. And by the way, when President Bush or others are speaking about terrorists, he's not mentioning it, that it's the ALF.
Or animal activists.
Yeah, or animal activists that are on the list. He's just mentioning terrorists, so we think he is doing his job.
I think the American people were tricked into this new form of police service through, where our country is such fear of the animal rights movement, and the #1 threat to domestic terrorism is the animal rights movement, and they're, all over the world this is touted on the front lines of papers. America deems the #1 threat to U.S. security the bunny huggers, and so most people in the world are taking that with a joke, but it's real. We were watching people go to jail. The hidden agenda, I think, is that they are worried about us for some reason, but I stand on the side of a road with a video camera with my face just like this, and if I'm what they think terrorists are, there's no reason why. This explains to me why terrorists get away with it.
Fortunately, this nation has superb professionals in law enforcement, intelligence, the military, and Homeland Security.
We had a day in this little bucolic town in the mountains where suddenly we had Homeland Security jeeps everywhere, and everyone in town, knowing each other as they do, is like, what's going on? And we thought maybe we had some Arab terrorist on the loose here in town, and who would stand out because it's rather a white population. And there were also helicopters going over the town. And these Homeland Security guys were omnipresent. Well, it turned out they were here to protect us from this terrible terrorist group called the Buffalo Field Campaign, which is a lot of very sweet, nice young boys who can barely grow beards yet.
They have Homeland Security escorting the buffalo to slaughterhouses. We have police cars that are Homeland Security written on the side, escorting bison up to 500 miles on the slaughterhouses.
Everyone was just horrified and disgusted that it had really come to this. It's so pathetic. It's such a misuse of...
There's an expression around here called more money than brains.
More money than brains. And the town was really crawling with them. They lost a lot of... There was not a lot of support for the Homeland Security group that day. Everyone was just shaking their heads and couldn't believe it was going on.
All you hear is the Animal Rights Movement or the Earth Liberation Front. These are the terrorist organizations. I've never once heard the pro-lifers being referred to as a terrorist organization, yet they murder abortion doctors, they burn and torture or blow up abortion clinics, and they stand out in front of abortion clinics and harass the poor women that are making the hardest choice of their life. They're not terrorists, No, they're not terrorists because the GOP party endorses the hell out of that issue.
When 9/11 went down, our editorial went to press right after 9/11, predicted basically that what's going to happen is that as the government fails to drag in Osama bin Laden and so forth, they'll turn on the easier targets, and those will be the animal rights activists. These tools will give them the means to bring in anybody who's doing arson, pipe bombing, and all that sort of thing.
What they're doing with the animal and the earth people, I think that they're going to go after the peace activists next. I think that any organization that has a viewpoint that's contrary to the government viewpoint is going to be looked at as the enemy, and I think they're going to be tarred and feathered with this brush of being called terrorist.
In fact, a one-arm woman who helps me with feral cat trappings, she's being investigated, interrogated by the FBI. I mean, she tells me they're very handsome, which is nice to know. The group I identify the most with, ALF. Yeah, is ALF. Now, I don't believe in doing anything illegal, so FBI, I know you're watching this. We don't believe in that, and we use the name the Kitty Liberation Front because we felt as strong as them, but it was also to make fun of ourselves. Well, we are the Kitty Liberation Front, not to be confused with the ALF. Yeah, right. A little bit more jiggling, please. Okay. That gets the ratings. Learning through our own experiences really is intimidation versus inspiration. It's better to inspire.
Fear and annoyance are amazing tools for getting people to do what you want.
We cannot do that through attacking, and it's amazing. But I understand where ALF comes from, and I have no problems with them because they're not hypocrites, and they are what they are.
There are three things in human life which are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind.
We started getting reports of animals being dumped here in Ahoskie, all of them right here behind the Piggly Wiggly shopping center. That kind of started the whole thing. The dogs and cats, they were partially frozen. There was rumors got out about the local Chinese place using the dogs for food. Really hurt his business tremendously.
There are 2 PETA employees who right now are facing a total of 50 felonies for animal cruelty and some other charges in North Carolina.
They would come down to this area, Ahoskie, and pick up some animals and take them back to their place in Norfolk, where we assumed that they were trying to find homes for them.
Less than an hour later, all the animals, 31 of them in all, were dead. Killed in the back of a PETA-owned van driving down the highway. And then these 2 had the gall to put the bodies in a trash bag, throw them in a dumpster behind a grocery store.
I'm just devastated, and all that I wanted to do was help the animals in the community.
Hinkle and Cook's boss, who is PETA's founder, is defending her employees. At a news conference shortly after the arrests, Ingrid Newkirk did call the dumping of bodies, quote, hideous, but said nothing about the alleged deception used to obtain the animals.
What she did was wrong with bodies, but she didn't cause suffering or pain or misery or anything like that.
That's the ethical treatment of animals that PETA stands for, apparently.
I was paged by the police department that afternoon, and they asked me to do an autopsy on one of the animals that they had found in this van, and it was a 6-month-old puppy that appeared to be just in absolute perfect health.
It's amazing to me that Ingrid has pictures of her with puppies and all this when their big thing is euthanizing. Or not owning pets.
As our regular animal shelters know, actually caring for animals doesn't make you a lot of money. It's very hard to raise money saying, oh, we're going to care for the animals. But raising money saying, we're going to stick the screws to McDonald's, boy, for some reason people pay for that. You know, PETA's really very shrewd and savvy marketers.
PETA is the most retrograde organization there is out there on dog and cat issues right across the boards. They really have misled the public grossly on their positions on companion animals. And the business in North Carolina